Okay, we are on. Okay, I'm Norman Pieniazek, or Pieniążek, if you want the Polish version of my last name. And we are talking to, four of us are talking together. And I am a geneticist. I got my PhD 50 years ago. So genetics equals molecular biology. I worked at the CDC for 24 years and retired 11 years ago. Okay. Jessica.
All right, I'm Jessica Hockett. I live in the Chicagoland area. I'm the least medically or scientifically qualified person in this conversation. My PhD is in educational psychology, and I worked with schools and education agencies for 20 plus years. And past couple of years, I've been independently investigating some events around the pandemic, specifically New York City's spring 2020 mortality event, and also the alleged disappearance of positive flu tests. Actually, no, they did, the positives did disappear, but the alleged disappearance of flu in 2020, 2021.
I'm Jonathan Engler. I live in the United Kingdom. I'm qualified in medicine and law and have had experience of working inside the pharmaceutical industry. I co-chair a group of what you might call COVID dissidents in the UK, along with Claire Craig. We're challenging every aspect of government policy related to the pandemic. I've got quite a broad range of interests in the pandemic, ranging from the original origin through to the testing, through to the disappearance of flu, through to the lack of evidence of the spread of a viral illness at all, or certainly a deadly viral illness at all, and through to the debacle with the vaccine rollout. I've co-authored a number of papers, which Martin has been kind enough to put onto his Substack, and Jessica and I have written a few papers as well. That's where we are.
Okay, I'm Professor Martin Neal, also in the UK. My professorship and PhD was in statistics and computer science. So my interest in artificial intelligence, probabilistic reasoning, practical application of these techniques in risk analysis, finance, the law, medicine, quite a wide range of things. I'm a part-time professor. I spend the rest of my time doing consulting, building software. We have a company for this stuff. I work closely with Professor Norman Fenton, who is now recently retired. We run a Substack called Where Are the Numbers? wherearethenumbers.substack.com. I think that's the web address. And like Jessica and Jonathan, we've got quite a wide interest in everything to do with the pandemic, from infection fatality rate prediction, prevalence prediction early on, pairing that up with hospitalization statistics, in order to help answer the question, was there ever a pandemic at all? And along the way, I've had to be dragged kicking and screaming towards an interest in biology, which I hated as a kid. Hence my interest in statistics and computer science. I love things that are inanimate material with no organisms. Yeah, I've had to become interested in the flu, COVID, yeah, well, it's been quite a journey. I thought it would be over in 6 months, but here we are, over 3 years later.
It's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jonathan, we started because Jonathan asked a very interesting question, and I think we can start with that, because this is, I think, very important.
Yeah, so you mentioned, what triggered my thinking to ask that question was, you mentioned a paper showing that hydroxychloroquine was effective against SARS, the original SARS-1, and I then mentioned the papers that we've written, which basically put forward a theory that actually is, deadly influenza-like illness. Is it actually bacterial pneumonia? Do people actually die of respiratory viral infections, or do they only ever die when there is bacterial involvement? If that is true, then the restriction on the use of antibiotics that was official policy that came out of a decade-long obsession with antibiotic resistance, and then you had during the COVID era, positive test meant no antibiotics, and of course that turned on its head the normal treatment that family doctors would give particularly to elderly people who, if they had a suggestion of a chest infection, it would be broad spectrum antibiotics. It's probably true to say that maybe those broad spectrum antibiotics were not needed or useless in 90% of the cases, but the trouble is you could never predict which were the 10% of cases which would need it, and in which the antibiotics prevented any bacterial secondary infection or treated some sort of incipient bacterial infection. So my question really was how disastrous potentially was the restriction on the use of antibiotics. Now, I actually don't, the scale of the shape of the purported death curves in northern Italy and New York City are not really compatible with restriction on antibiotic use being a significant part of them. They're just too sudden. It's like a bomb going off. And I'm sure Jessica can talk a bit about that in a few minutes. But it is potentially, I think, compatible with what happened later on in the COVID era. So, certainly in the purported second wave, where lots of people there was testing frenzy, and anybody with a positive test was effectively consigned to never being treated by antibiotics. So that was my question about the link. And of course, with antibiotics, you probably count hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. I think these could well have their beneficial use might be mediated through antibacterial. The other point that's worth making is that all the proponents of what you might call, broadly speaking, early treatment strategies for COVID. My opinion, it's not early treatment; it's just normal treatment of respiratory infections. And the main reason why those people had astonishingly high success rates from early treatment regimens was that the patients didn't go anywhere near hospitals, and hospitals were where people died. So,
if I may, I sent all of you a link to a paper by, of all the people, Dr. Anthony Fauci from 2008.
Yeah, we cite this in one of our Substack articles. We cite this paper
but this is 2008.
Yeah.
And he says specifically in the conclusions that waiting for the next pandemic, you have to stockpile antibiotics. So the case is clear. There is that means this what happened in 2020 is all fake. It's all fake. People didn't use the knowledge that was accumulated for a long time. For instance, all the story with masks and with distances and with washing hands and all those non-pharmacological aspects. This all was studied for almost 100 years with flu. So simply, starting with Fauci, everybody just cast aside all the knowledge and started to pretend that viral diseases, the viral infections of the respiratory tract, there is nothing to, there is no, with antibiotics it can be cured because the virus kills you. So the only thing that can help is a vaccine. And they all forgot what the same man, Anthony Fauci, reminded everybody in January of 2023 that vaccines for viral infections of the respiratory tract do not work.
Yeah.
Why? Everybody probably knows that, although many people are saying, oh, look, vaccines work for polio, so why not for COVID? No. Viruses have, polio infects us once and we are immune to the end of our life unless we have problems with the immune system. But flu or flu-like illnesses infect us all the time. So no immunity is building after infection. So you cannot use a vaccine to mimic an infection. And this Fauci understands and puts a big, let's say, very important table in his paper, published in January of 2023, where he says that those viruses that even pass through our respiratory tract, like measles, and many others, they pass through our respiratory tract and go into the blood and cause viremia. This is something that our immune system, just jumps up and starts chasing. So of course, immunity is created. Of course, the virus may cause a lot of problems before the immune system will shut down the infection. But the viruses that infect our respiratory tract, like flu, paraflu, and a lot of other viruses, some people say 1,500 viruses, they do not leave lasting infections, so you cannot mimic the infection with a vaccine. And this is obvious. Why I knew it for years, because I knew Donald Henderson, who published the best paper on all kind of ways to mitigate the flu epidemic. So I knew everything, not being a specialist although I worked with those diseases. I
recall reading the Henderson paper. That was published in the early 2000s, wasn't it? And wasn't Thomas Inglesby a co-author on that from Johns Hopkins?
Yeah. This was, at that time he was Henderson.
And I recall early in the pandemic that despite this agreement with Henderson that these non-pharmaceutical interventions wouldn't work,
it's very
he was quite happy to go on US TV and recommend the very same things that he had rejected as a respected academic more than a decade before.
I think you might be being too kind, Norman, in saying that Fauci forgot. I think they buried and suppressed. But what I still don't understand about the scientific community is that there was so much spoken in early 2020, which was so obviously bullshit. I don't know why there were so few. Well, I mean, I know the answer is that they created an illusion of consensus by suppressing any alternative voices. But I would have thought that it's a remarkable example of a complete lack of courage and scientific independence. If you take the whole obsession with antibodies as being the only thing that mattered, ignoring prior immunity through coronavirus, ignoring even the data from Diamond Princess, which showed it was a nothing burger. All of this, scientists must have been scratching their head, but just decided not to say anything, because there must have been plenty of orthodox immunology was completely ignored.
Yeah, but do you know that there is no herd immunity in respiratory illnesses?
The whole concept of herd immunity was complete nonsense. This is a completely mutable soup of coronaviruses,
Jonathan's hit on quite a number of points there. Yeah, this first one about there's agreement between you two. There's no such thing as herd immunity. But I guess you need to convince the population of that in order to sell a vaccine is giving you a way of reaching herd immunity. There's a target that everybody can agree on. But this issue about the lack of courage or the lack of people's convictions just to admit, either privately amongst themselves and other professional colleagues, that they had thrown out the baby with the bathwater and decided not to, decided to ignore Fauci's paper and decided to ignore the Henderson paper and decided to know what we assume should have been common knowledge that was baked into the system, right? So why is it people were prepared to look away and not go public, or so few people did. Do you have an explanation for that, given that you worked at CDC? I mean, is there something about the...
Yeah, CDC went not into a just lockdown, but CDC went into a state that most people worked from home. You can imagine how lab people can work from home. So CDC was destroyed basically still during Trump. But of course, the worst thing is not that the people, they would never, the top echelon would never listen to lab people. They would get their information from the HHS department because they were all political. In old CDC parlance, before there was a building for the whole building, for the top brass, there was a floor in one of the buildings, but this changed, in some 30 years. And this was called the sixth floor. The sixth floor didn't have anyone that would be, let's say, in the position to question what they got from Washington. The only guy that really I admire, because he hired me, and he was really a great guy, was Dr. Mason, who was during Ronald Reagan, and he was brave enough to stand to all the AIDS activists, because they very quickly stopped to, let's say, blame everything on the CDC, started to blame everything on Ronald Reagan and the NIH. So CDC, you cannot isolate CDC from HHS. So somebody in the HHS during Trump was very deeply, in the pandemic mode. I don't know who, I have no idea, but what CDC people were talking, it was not different between the times of Obama and Trump, the Biden and Trump. They were in the same mode, probably because of Fauci. I know Fauci from '86 when he was called the mean midget. Do you know why? Fauci sank Robert Gallo, although Robert Gallo was in the National Cancer Institute and Fauci was in the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. So they were, there was no connection. But Fauci started this whole story that Gallo has stolen the HIV virus, or the LAV virus, from Luc Montagnier. And that's why Gallo didn't get, there was a whole investigation in Congress and instigated by this mean midget. And he sunk the chances for Bob Gallo to get the patent and later the Nobel Prize. Even Luc Montagnier was surprised that Gallo didn't get the Nobel Prize.
Having lived through the last few years, and in particular what's going on at the moment, which is this, which we can move on to talk about, this what I call, and I think Martin agreement, I don't know if Jessica has a view particularly on it, this, I think you'd probably agree with us, this whole discussion of lab leak versus zoonotic origin is a false dichotomy, because there's no novel virus which spread around the world causing lots of illness. And I sometimes wonder whether the HIV story is much more complex than they've sold it to us. I mean, for one thing, obviously, it's a strange virus that has completely different demographic and symptoms in Africa as compared to other countries, for example, compared to the US. But I wonder whether the Gallo against, so what's the other guy called?
Luc Montagnier?
The Montagnier Gallo, yeah, the Montagnier Gallo kind of battle there is almost equivalent to the lab leak versus zoonotic theory. It's a diversion from, which is making you say, look over here. And right. I just wonder sometimes.
No, the thing is that Luc Montagnier was not a virologist in the sense that Robert Gallo was the guy who discovered the HTLV viruses, human T-cell leukemia viruses. So Luc Montagnier have seen this virus, and the doctors knew that people that have this virus have some unusual infections. But then Robert Gallo knew how to sequence this virus and found that it was similar to those viruses. And actually, I think named it HTLV3 or 4, I don't remember that. So, but why the African, and my wife was and I published some papers with her, was a molecular epidemiologist for HIV, and she worked with people all over the world. The difference was that in Africa, most people that had the virus had other sexually transmitted diseases, which were, kind of exotic in the United States, so they were not really present in the United States or other countries, Western countries. And Brazil was the only country that in some way resembled Africa because they had all the subtypes of HIV. Europe and United States had just one. So this is one difference in the, let's say, subtypes that were circulating. But you mentioned that the origin of the virus. The origin of the virus in the paper that, this Fan Wu, was I think the name of the first author. These people had, of course, in the Wuhan Institute all fantastic instruments, sequencers that they could get because they were very, very rich institute, and they were going around hospitals. There are more people in Wuhan, like in my other country, Poland. There are 37 million people living in Wuhan, so there are a lot of hospitals. And a lot of people have pneumonia. So they were going and checking people with pneumonia for a coronavirus because they were doing research on coronaviruses. And doing, this bronchial alveolar lavage, they were not doing any swabs because they knew that you cannot, present a swab and the swabs from our sinuses or the upper throat, they show the quality of the air that we breathe. You can imagine how much air we put to us every day. So, and in this area, you have billions of viruses of all kind of origin. So, of course, to blame a virus that you found in your nose on an infection, the CDC wrote in this epic papers that you cannot use these swabs for PCR. I remember that. So they were doing something that in the West you couldn't do without let's say, permission. They were washing the lungs using a special equipment and getting so-called BAL. I worked on BAL in my 1990 paper. So this is something that, only in China was possible. And they were on the hunt for a new coronavirus.
Why do you think they were on the hunt for a new coronavirus?
Now, if you work in a institute of virology institute in China that works with coronaviruses, and there was SARS in not that long time ago, you would go for a hunt for new coronaviruses because.
But why now? Do you think there was genuinely a cluster of illnesses?
No, there was not a cluster of illnesses.
So I'm just trying to think. I mean, they've been doing this for presumably. If you've got this attitude, they'll have been doing it for years and years and years. Why just now? Or are you presenting their side of the story?
No. I am presenting my side of the story. That is how I understand that. I may be wrong, but
are you saying that it was just a? Are you going down a route here where they're testing for coronaviruses all the time because that's their modus operandi of their research, etc., and they happen to find this one? Or are you, because I think it's highly unlikely. I mean, they must find coronaviruses all the time.
No, look, you cannot get, even in China, a lot of patients that are very, very sick to do the extraction of bronchial alveolar lavage. This is kind of a painful situation. During the time of AIDS patients were very, let's say, they wanted to help the science. You can understand people, even when they were, really going away, they would still agree to everything to help other people.
Yeah.
But in China, this was on the verge of, legality. Nobody could do a fishing expedition in the US without, if people are dying of pneumonia, like in this EPIC study that the CDC did with 4 hospitals, you can imagine how much paperwork was involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in China, it was much, much easier. And then they had all the equipment to look for coronaviruses. On the other hand, what helped was the next generation sequencing. Next generation sequencing is sequencing. I'll stick to Illumina, which is the most common.
Yeah.
And in some way, my former student took the Solexa, this apparatus from the machine from the UK and made it a worldwide hit. But this was actually something invented in the UK, I think in MRC in Cambridge, but I'm not sure. So this is, you put some kind of a master sequence in this instrument, and then you do sequencing and check what matches this sequence, because it's very difficult to assemble something from scratch. Pieces are small and there are so many combinations that is very difficult. So they, as they say, they had all kind of bad origin viruses. I don't think this kind of work would be permitted in the US, but of course, having 37 million people in Wuhan and several thousand probably people dying every day from all kinds of infections. China is not that doesn't have a healthy population, so they found it. One case of somebody that was very, very sick. Of course, they were looking using BAL only on people that were very, very sick. If they would want to test everybody, this was not doable and would be extremely expensive. So then, based on the sequence, they created a RT-qPCR.
Can I interrupt, Norman? When you say they found it, are you saying that they got lucky? They simply found it despite engaging in a long campaign of searching, that they finally discovered, a novel virus. But up to that point, they had failed.
It's what? I didn't hear you.
But okay, so at that point when they were on this expedition looking for viruses, carrying out these quite complex and potentially painful procedures, you're claiming that they did find the SARS-CoV-2, a novel coronavirus.
No, not a novel. I don't think it was novel.
Right.
Novel to detection.
Yeah,
yes.
novel to detection.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. But up until that point, they had, are we speculating, or do we know that they had simply failed to discover anything else unusual, despite many years of doing this?
You see, if you read the papers on this, on the EPIC study, they didn't look for anything new. They looked for using the old school microbiology, they looked for the viruses and bacteria that they knew. The Chinese fed a lot of different coronavirus sequences and were assembling whatever they got from they couldn't use SARS-1 or MERS, because MERS is only 50% identical to the Wuhan virus. Don't call it SARS-CoV-2. I don't like this name. This is originally in the paper. It was not called SARS-CoV-2.
No.
This was given probably by Pfizer or Pfizer agents in end of January or beginning of February 2020. Why? If you look at the sequence, first version of the submission of the sequence to GenBank, it's not called SARS-CoV-2. It's called Wuhan human virus 1. So at some point, this virus got renamed for an effect. Oh, that's SARS virus. It's going to kill you. But then you look at the Diamond Princess, and almost no one was killed. So do you follow me that this was made up from, not by the Chinese, because Chinese in the same paper created a test and did swabs. Didn't do, of course, 1,600 or 3,000 or 5,000. They got swabs. They worked from swabs and then found that in the vicinity of this wet market in Wuhan, they found 1,600 people infected. Okay, that's the data published by the Chinese. Everybody forgot about that. With Jonathan, we had some discussion about who created the first test and the story which refuses to die about Corman and Drosten from the Charity Hospital in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to focus in on that. I mean, I don't understand your point about the original sequence. From what I can see, what happened was these Chinese people, they published this sequence, said, we found this novel virus, here's the sequence, and they put it out on the internet.
Not in GenBank, in the database.
In GenBank. And then didn't, when Drosten said, here's a test that we can test, that can find this virus, he used that sequence, validated it against, I think it was, well, they didn't have any clinical material, because he had no clinical material. So they validated it. I can't remember the basis. They validated against SARS-1 then, and then what else did they do? I can't remember what else they did.
Don't believe them even a word, because the Chinese published the sequence of the primers, but this appeared a bit later. But they sent to, I think, 2 journals a preprint. Somebody has stolen the sequences from this preprint and gave it to Corman and Drosten, who took, we will become millionaires. But of course, life is very different.
Okay, that's interesting. So what you're saying is that Corman and Drosten, that somebody, okay, that's an interesting, I've not heard this as a theory before. Somebody found the sequences maybe before it was published, somebody in one of these journals or something, a preprint server, they got the sequence from the Chinese before it was published, sent it to him, and then to create plausible deniability about how they came up with it, they made up this story about validating it against SARS and everything.
The Chinese published those primers, many different primers, including RT-qPCR primers. So
are those still? Is that still verifiable now that they published those primers?
Yeah, that's in the paper. That's in the paper. Just get the paper and look at it. This was published in Nature.
Sorry, Norman. What papers and which journals?
I can give you the original paper.
Like, are these internationally respected journals or still in the preprint servers?
Are there any more internationally respected journals?
No, they are not.
I was referring to the ones in computer science.
No,
I know.
Look, it's 2 million papers on long COVID published, all of them fake. I'll give you the.
If that's a genuine epidemic, it's the epidemic of academic publishing, isn't it? I mean, that's the one thing that really took off.
No. The publishing. I lost all my faith in. I'll give you the link to the. I'll give you a link to 2 things: to the original paper and to the GenBank. This is the 3rd version of the sequence.
I'm just wondering, sorry to interrupt you, Norman, but for the purposes of the presentation, given that we've recorded this and we might broadcast it, would you be able to share screen and actually show the papers so that people watching the video can see them?
I don't know how to share a screen. I am a senior citizen. I know a lot, but not that.
Well, maybe if you share the link, maybe I could do it in a minute.
There's a button at the bottom. It's at the bottom of at least on my version.
Okay, I see that.
Okay.
It should give you a number of options either to show an individual window.
Okay, we'll do it. we'll first do. You want first the Fauci papers, maybe?
I think people are reasonably au fait with the Fauci papers. I think there's these Chinese papers that you've
Okay, paper one
are the important ones, and
okay,
then you mentioned the gene bank. Just maybe show that.
Okay. That's here. Yeah, that's not that. Okay, here we have the paper, and now I press share screen. Jessica, please help.
Okay, yes, just press share screen, and
Mhm.
it should just share your screen.
Uh,
You just
oh,
just
tap
the
the
button.
the window you want to share.
okay.
There you go. There you go. Now there you go. Yep,
Okay.
I know this paper. Yeah, this is nature. This is a nature paper.
This is nature, and if you
Yep.
go through that, you will find the primers. Here is the molecular phylogeny, and they are in the data. Oh.
I'm not seeing. Oh, there we go. It just took some time. Yeah. Okay.
In the
What's
data of the primers. So.
What's the publication date on the new?
That's February the 3rd, 2020.
Okay, now I can stop sharing. Okay.
When did they submit it though?
This will submit. I can tell you because this will be
Here. Yeah.
Received 7th of January. So here you have it.
Yeah.
And you know, they wanted to become millionaires, but they did not understand how commercial companies will very quickly and with a lot of resources beat them to that, because they are just scientists at the hospital, well known for let's say statements that were not true, both of them. So then commercial companies can beat them in any game. And by, I think, end of March, there were 200 tests that got the EUA from FDA. So life works differently than some scientists think. So
Right. But okay, so I think you said you didn't believe that it was a novel virus. I mean, did I hear you correctly?
yeah, but Jessica knows that very well, that it was light speed how the infection spread in the US. When the tests appeared, there was not that we have a center in New York or center in North Washington. No, this virus appeared everywhere where they was using the test.
Right.
So we're all agreed on.
What was the mechanism by which the test flashed positive then? Was that a property of the test, or was there some pathogen of some kind that was historically prevalent and the test was flashing green?
Yes, there are very many coronaviruses, human coronaviruses, and some of group B, because this is group B. Although taxonomy of viruses based on their nucleic acid sequence is kind of, unusable, because SARS-1 is only 80% similar from the sequence to SARS-2. 80%, that means 20% difference in a virus that has 30,000 nucleotides. That's a lot. But some people say, okay, we just created a site for furin in a virus in the spike gene, and in this way, those guys made a pathogen. Look, a human pathogen, if you want to make from a bat virus, is not changing just something in the spike protein. You need many, maybe 1,000 of changes to appear, so it will match the human machinery of protein synthesis and other stuff. So, but
right. But what you're saying is quite interesting. Then, if there's homology between coronaviruses and SARS-CoV-2,
that's similarity. That's not homology.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. But are you then suggesting that the PCR would flash positive for OC43, NL63, and other coronaviruses? And the reason I ask that is that Corman Dawson produced a paper early on when specifically on the PCR test, to argue that there was a very low rate of cross-reactivity with other coronaviruses and other pathogens.
But they still had 4, actually. They still had 4 false positives out of 236.
Oh yeah, sure. But I'm just wondering what Armin's view is on this.
CDC EPIC papers, they say, do not test swabs from the nose or the throat. Positive result do not mean that this is an infection by this virus.
Mm-hmm.
We pass so many viruses, it could be cross-reactivity with a virus from, let's say, earthworm or whatever, or a turtle. Yeah. Then people sequence a lot of those viruses, but they sequenced it by matching to a standard sequence that they had in the NGS machine. So that's all very suspect. Then people finding those viruses everywhere. Remember the COVID toast from New York Times in 2020? Yes. There was no virus there until they decided there are no COVID toes, but everybody was finding in the blood coronavirus in the toes and publishing papers that the coronavirus is there. Did they fake it? Yes.
In the toes.
Toes are toes.
Yeah, COVID toes. Don't you guys remember that from early? Maybe that was a U.S. thing.
Are we talking amphibians or the little?
No. This was a story. I have some of the papers on that.
Yeah.
Which was in the U.S. and in Spain, blown up by the New York Times, which I think journalist from El País reads in Spain, and then the doctors read El País. And this propagated in this way that only in Spain, doctors were finding that people infected with COVID, how do you know they're infected with COVID? They had COVID toes, which were kind of red.
Mm-hmm.
Not fingernails, painted red, but toes that were red.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently this was all fake. But people believe it. The doctor looked, oh, my dear, you've got COVID toes. Oh my God, I'm going to die.
Well, they always remember every symptom. Every symptom was COVID,
and including not having symptoms.
Including
that was also
the latest variant has no symptoms.
No, the variant is another story. As my wife and I used to study HIV variants, so we know a lot about that. And my wife actually was on the committee that was created the naming scheme for HIV, and this is such a scam. But you know it from England, from the WhatsApp messages that let us invent a new variant to scare people.
Yeah. But
so Norman, are you saying that? Go ahead. I just wanted to summarize.
Because you've mentioned the EPIC, the CDC's EPIC. Was that a program of work or a study? You mentioned that a few times. That's completely unknown to me. So if you could share some references for that would be very helpful.
You're talking about the Chicago one, right? The Chicago one.
Chicago.
Yeah. But I'd like to be a little bit clearer about what this mechanism was, where they came to the conclusion that you shouldn't recommend or use swabs simply because there's this, I guess if I might misunderstand you, but there may be a whole host of viruses co-inhabiting your upper nasopharynx area.
I'm still sharing.
And
I put it in there.
That you've got issues with cross-reactivity and identification, and whether that's the true infectious agent that might be making you ill, etc. So, but what I don't really understand is does that how you go from maybe having a normal run-of-the-mill coronaviruses, like OC43, in your nose to a positive PCR test? What's the step-by-step process by which that cross-reaction or misidentification might occur?
Yeah, as I told you, this should never be done, because you test. Let's say if you have a gas-powered car, I have an electric car, so it's a different story. But if you have a gas-powered car and you want to test, if the car has an infection of something, and you take out the air filter, you do a swab and do a PCR, you find whatever you want to find. Yeah. So doing the test on this is what CDC says specifically. that you should not use swabs from the nose or from the throat, upper throat, to diagnose an infection of your respiratory system. But so this should never be done, because you test the quality of the air you breathe and not the infection. And in this way, you get people that are symptomless and have a lot of virus in those swabs. So there's nothing to it. You cannot say that this is a, let's say that this is something that is a, false positive or whatever else. It should never be done. And to do it by washing your lungs, which you can do only in a study, but not in routine diagnosis, no, you wouldn't earn those millions if you invested in a company that makes tests.
So your view is that this pathogen, this thing, I say co-opted. It's co-opted from the background. It's something that was already out there, already in us, maybe, right? And it's prevalent. But then also there's the test, at least the one that they were using early on, in the spring 2020 era. Then we know that the test kept changing, right? So that's maybe a different ballgame. But in the beginning, these tests they're picking up a lot of stuff. Actually, the CDC's test, the first one that they came out with, remember there was that whole debacle. I think it was sort of a stage debacle, but where, this test is messing up. It's testing positive, even like with water, or some of the public health labs in Illinois and other states that were using it were saying that they couldn't validate it, right? I think that was February.
A lateral flow test. I think those were the lateral flow tests, actually.
I didn't think so.
No, I think the CDC test was pre-infected accidentally with COVID. Yeah. And the same thing happened at the same time here in the UK, that the first batch of tests came out were pre-infected with COVID because of some cross-contamination issue.
But if you look how the CDC and other countries dealt with SARS-1, there were no PCR tests because they are not needed. Who cares? Who cares who is infected with what? You see, one thing, if people get very sick, you have to treat them. Yeah? If you suspect that it may be a problem, then you can isolate them, tell them to stay home. But you have to treat them. You have to treat them as Fauci says, nobody else but Fauci. So you have to stockpile antibiotics, because in all the previous, including the Spanish flu, in all the previous pandemics, people were dying of pneumonia, bacterial pneumonia. And then bacterial pneumonia has this problem that then it's not just a disease of the lungs. You remember, if you have flu, a good doctor, if you have this flu for some time, a good doctor will give you antibiotics, and because they are so-called flu complications. All the complications are bacterial Streptococcus pneumoniae infection of the body. And if you get a bacteremia, that means those bacteria in your body, that's called sepsis, and this is very, very dangerous. So you need to get an antibiotic for your body to control that. Another thing that we didn't mention that was specifically forbidden, all the documents passed to the doctors worldwide. It came from Jack Ma from China, those documents. We talked about that, Jessica.
Yeah, we did. I have that, yeah.
Never use this non-steroidal, inflammatory medicine, especially this which is in an inhalator. Come on. In this way, what you get from such an infection, bacterial infection, you get what some people call a cytokine storm. What does it mean? It means that's a common cause of death, but it involves bacteria. Bacteria cause fluid accumulation in the lungs. What it means, it would like you will get water in your lungs. It reduces the gas, the passage of oxygen into the blood. And remember one thing, because this is a friend of mine looked very carefully on all those instructions to doctors. which were universally passed all over the world by the Chinese, by Jack Ma, of Alibaba. So they say that you have to start the therapy with this ventilator when blood saturation is below 94. Come on, a lot of people have it around 88 and they are okay.
Yeah, we
Well, I use a smartwatch, and last night I was between 86 and 90 for about 20 minutes. So I'm glad I wasn't rushed into hospital.
Yeah, no, I think we're well aware of that. I think what we're still struggling to understand is a mechanism by which how was the conjuring trick of there being a novel virus has appeared and spread around the world. Are you I think I'm right in saying that you're saying that it is a complete construct of the testing that's rolled out.
Yes and no. That means it could be a construct of the testing, but then, as you know, let us just talk about this, which I really know. In May of 2020, two papers appeared at the same time, one in The Lancet and the other in New England Journal of Medicine. They were published basically by the same people. There was one guy from Zurich with a Czech name on one of those papers who was not on the others. These guys claimed that they have a database called Surgisphere. Remember that?
Yeah.
And they, May of 2020, and they claim that hydroxychloroquine is very toxic to the heart. That means they knew something about the pseudo vaccines, that they will be very bad for the heart. Huh? So this is a lie, and these papers were retracted 2 weeks later because there were some. We mentioned that people were usually cowards, but there were some people that were very, very, very brave, and they wrote to these both journals that there is no such database. And I knew it because I worked on the molecular mechanism of resistance to hydroxychloroquine. And I knew that this drug was taken by billions of people all over the world to control malaria. So much that now most Plasmodium falciparum parasites are resistant to hydroxychloroquine. And I was simply researching what's the basis for this resistance from the molecular point of view. And so I knew it was a lie. But a lady from my family, who was a nurse, told me, no, we knew that. So you see how people were taken, for a ride by the media. This lady should know, and her brother almost died of something, and he was treated also with hydroxychloroquine because they knew it was malaria, but later he was treated with antibiotics for a pulmonary infection, but she still claimed that antibiotics should not be used for pulmonary infection. So people were taken for a ride for various reasons. I do not watch TV, so I am not exposed to the media a lot. But why Lancet and New England of Medicine didn't publish the names of the reviewers and tell that we are not going to use these reviewers because they are stupid? How could reviewers, for journals that it's not so easy to get papers in, how could they review positively these two papers that were fake?
There are now thousands, if not millions, of papers which need retracting.
Oh yeah, all that claim that there is long COVID.
Yeah, well, not just the long COVID, but all the vaccine papers. So many of them, all the real world studies, or it's all they don't make sense.
Any papers with what COVID in them.
Yeah, I suppose just trying to reduce it down to a couple of simple questions. I think you agree that if we'd not had any PCR technology, if the PCR technology had never been invented, nothing would have happened. We wouldn't have noticed anything. Is that?
Yes, but you see, as you can see in the very good EPIC papers and the POIS paper earlier, PCR was used only on samples that were, from BAL, from this washing of the lungs, which, is not a routine diagnostic sample. But people forgot why in 2002, 2003, with the dangerous virus as SARS-1 was, why no one did PCR diagnostics. PCR existed already for 20 years or so. There were a lot of PCR tests, but during the time, I knew all people that, the worst was Canada, because in Canada, they closed all the wards for infectious diseases. So
do you not think there is something, in retrospect, do you not think that this whole SARS story is suspect as well?
No, it's not. It's not. No, I talked to real people, that went for it. I knew other stories that, for instance, the hantavirus from the Four Corners, the Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, that are fantastic stories, about very bad viruses which didn't really create a pandemic. To create a pandemic, as you know, in 2019, this whole technology of mRNA-based vaccines this technology ended in a garbage heap. But the companies like Moderna and BioNTech in Germany and Pfizer invested billions. So they had to create something. And I think that, a few $1 million here, a few $1 million there really, pushed this whole story. Because you cannot think that everybody, including Fauci, is stupid. Fauci is not stupid, he's mean. And he wanted to get a Nobel Prize. He didn't get a Nobel Prize for AIDS. He wanted to get a Nobel Prize for the Wuhan virus. He then, in January of 2023, knowing that he's not going to get a Nobel Prize, he pulled the plug and published the paper on that new types of vaccines are needed for respiratory infections.
Oh, that's because he didn't win. Oh, that's interesting. I had never heard that theory before. That's why he published in 2023.
Yeah, because, do you have another reason why suddenly, and he's still repeating a lot of stuff in the media because he knows that very few people read scientific papers. And if they read it, they do not understand them. This
is a little bit of a tangent, but related to that, I mean, in the U.S. at least, Fauci and others, Scott Gottlieb, a lot of people have for many years, fantasized, I would say, and called for a universal flu vaccine, universal coronavirus vaccine. I call it one shot to rule them all. Like this idea of a one annual vaccine that everybody, how profitable is this, right? A flu shot was profitable, is profitable, but that everybody, every man, woman, and child would take this vaccine before respiratory virus season. That has been in the mix for a long time. I don't know how often that was talked about at the CDC when you were there, but it's, it's all over the place for at least a decade or longer.
I was not, let's say, focusing on respiratory infections, except for these two studies. I was focusing on other things. So can you imagine, until 2020, I got my flu shot every year, and I started to get it in 1978 when I worked at the Pasteur Institute in Paris. And this was the only time I worked with vaccines, because I worked a bit on the hepatitis B vaccine, which is, this technology that goes back so many years, but everybody forgot that this technology is better than something stupid based on RNA, which is extremely, extremely toxic. The so-called subunit vaccines, which are based on a protein, because you could not grow hepatitis B virus in culture. You could not produce the proteins in culture, especially that they tried to do it from human blood. But fortunately, this vaccine was not done. So they took a gene, because sequencing was way back in 1978. And they created a plasmid. And then this plasmid was moved from bacteria to yeast because this protein needed to be processed in a eukaryotic cell, not a bacterial cell. This is what I was doing for a short while. And this vaccine could be made for, and was made, for coronavirus. But strangely, the vaccine, which was made by Novavax in the US, in some way could not get, it was available already in the spike proteins, based on the spike protein. It was already available in August of 2020. But in some way, FDA didn't want to approve it. Although it's protein-based, it will stay in the deltoid muscle. There are no magic that it has to go somewhere. Why it was not approved? I have two theories. One is that this was a relatively poor company and didn't really go and give a lot of presents around. Or if you remember the OxyContin study, didn't give a lot of envelopes containing cash around. Or the FDA people are stupid. In the group that approves vaccine, take your pick.
Or corrupt.
Yeah. It was approved relatively quickly in Canada. So my friend, but this was not recommended by doctors. Doctors were just giving, like OxyContin, were giving the wrong vaccine. My friend from Canada wanted to travel to Europe for his wedding anniversary in 2021, and he somehow got this vaccine, had the certificate, because he asked me, should I take the mRNA vaccine? I said, oh no. But then he said, should I take the Novavax vaccine? I said, okay, it may not be very good to you, but at least it's not as bad as the mRNA vaccine. mRNA vaccines were not even approved for animals. Can you imagine that? They were found to be too dangerous. And all the story about the wonderful drugs based on this technology for doing cancer drugs, that's all a lie. Because as you may remember, there is a technology called humanized monoclonal antibodies that cured President Carter from a melanoma that even migrated to his brain. And there are about 500 drugs now based on this technology. And some people have the, I don't know, corrupt mind to recommend mRNA-based stuff to still quickly kill cancer patients. So
that's amazing. I mean, I think, I don't know what you think about this, Norman, but I mean, do you think the motive for a lot of this was launching the mRNA platform? I mean, there could be a lot of reasons for that. I think they were trying to I think they were trying to off-ramp the egg-based flu shots because they were causing problems. I'm not saying that was the sole driver of everything. Fauci wanted a pandemic. They've been investing in pandemic and bioterrorism preparedness for a long time, so I don't know the ins and outs of all the motives, but now we see, Jonathan, didn't you post that article the other day about mRNA for flu shots? And I mean, like, I think we can see where this is going.
I just suggested that maybe the story about the current flu shots in combination with the COVID mRNA shots as being potentially dangerous, whether that was just the next step in the story was going to be
right.
We need to replace the flu shots now with mRNA flu shots because we know that mRNA is safe.
But it's just funny because nobody talks about like the 2020 flu shot, right? Like after spring 2020 or the 2019 flu shot, after spring 2020 was a flu shot in September and October. And then the COVID shot came in December, right? I mean, but like nobody talks about so there were no concerns about people who got the flu shot in September 2020 or October 2020 and then got, where's the study on that, right?
The flu shots are as bereft of good evidence as
right.
as
Right,
energy.
but people take them anyway.
Let's settle that question. Ask Norman whether do you still get your yearly
Sure.
flu shot?
Yeah,
Norman?
sure, right.
No. No, of course.
There
Then,
we go.
you know, I talked to
I
my
rest my
friend
case.
who also retired, who was the head of this flu lab, and she told me that simply this vaccine doesn't work, and I was surprised.
And she was head of the lab that developed the flu vaccine.
No, somebody told me, you can verify that,
Right.
that in 2020 the patent on the flu vaccine grown in eggs, yeah, or in
Right.
embryos, chick embryos, that this patent expired. But again, you guys know more about patents and stuff like that. I had a patent. Curiously, I had a patent on the use of adenovirus for a vaccine, but it expired a long time ago.
Interesting.
Right, I wasn't aware of that actually. That's very interesting.
By the way, it looks like the data on the flu vaccine efficacy is based on test negative designs and is complete rubbish anyway.
Terrible.
Yeah, but you don't know what you get. You don't know if you get sick after getting the flu vaccine, maybe one of 1,500.
Yeah, it's the greatest marketing scam
Racket.
ever.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not many deaths attributed to flu, it's a great vaccine. If there's lots of them, oh dear, must try harder next time to predict
Right.
the strain. I mean,
Right. Well, and also, I don't think I told you, Jonathan and Martin, but I did find, you know, the U.S. military requires the flu vaccine of people in service. I mean, you can get an exemption and whatever, but
Yeah.
I found from the Air Force, I found a document from them. The military pays something like 150 or 100 between 115 and $150 per flu vaccine.
I think
Every year.
CDC buys all the vaccines. There is a fund that CDC gets from the government for all the vaccines. CDC distributes a lot of vaccines.
Yeah.
The flu.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's a money. It's the flu shot was a huge money maker. Even though not everybody took it, there are a lot of what I would call like captive audiences. I mean, pediatricians recommend it every time you go to the doctor during flu season. You bring your kids in. Long-term care facilities, right? The military, like there are a lot of it. People don't think about it, but the flu shot racket needed to be protected. In my opinion, what's better than a shot that people take every year? You know, polio vaccine you take once, right? Like when you're a kid, but flu is like, this is the greatest thing in the world, and nobody really doubts it. People know that it doesn't really work, or it might not, but nobody really blames it for any adverse effect, right? You just see it as getting flu anyway. So I don't know. I think that there was a lot. My own opinion is that there was a lot to protect with the flu shot and flu surveillance program that was a success. I think they have successfully protected that for now, and are just going to roll it right into one shot that protects everybody from COVID, flu, RSV, right? I mean, I think that's where they want to go. But I mean, I hope people don't have enough faith in the shots now that they, you know, it's like poetic justice, right? Like that's what they wanted to do, but now nobody's going to take it. That would be awesome. Like we have to put that out of business, but we'll see.
You know, very rarely you get the information that rhinoviruses are the most common cause of pulmonary infections. And I don't know if you remember that every 4 or 5 years, media all over the world will publish story that there is a new and effective vaccine against rhinoviruses. And a lot of people go and try to get it. And even they had it, which was, I think, 4 or 5 times in the past. There were stories on a vaccine that bypasses the problem, you know, because you see viruses are in your respiratory tract, and antibodies after a vaccine are in your blood. Okay, these two things do not match well, because you don't get those antibodies from the blood into the lungs, because the lungs and the sinuses have a very different way of dealing with dirt and viruses. They have, you know, and they have just one antibody that really doesn't get updated a lot. This is the immunoglobulin A, which is not updated constantly. It's a very interesting stuff, but our immune system, if it would deal with all stuff that gets into our sinuses and the lungs, would we occupy just with that? Because can you imagine how many allergens and infectious agents we get with every time we get some air in the system? And this is not the lungs that everything can pass through. We get all this stuff in and then we have to get it out. So that's a very complicated system, and the immune system really stays away from that. Yeah? So a vaccine, they thought would be good if it will be sprayed to your nose. Great, that's absolutely great. But there is not an easy way that the spraying of a vaccine in your nose would in some way control the pathogens you have in your lungs and sinus. The bad news, very bad news.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about, I mean, just because this is a tangent, but you mentioned antibodies. Like what do you think about antibody testing for SARS-CoV-2, for flu? I've read some stuff from the CDC's, flu people, and they say, at least previously, they said that antibody testing for flu is like, that's not reliable whatsoever, just because of how you have to get the sample and the timing of it, and it's just not considered reliable. So what do you think, Norman, about these serology studies or antibody testing for SARS-CoV-2? It just seems to me that it's a pointless exercise, but it was used to prove, like, natural or herd immunity, like we have to reach herd immunity, and to me that just seems like a farce.
You see, the thing is that testing for the antibodies is okay if you have a profile of a person for some time. Okay. Let's say before what kind of antibodies you have that would react to.
You want to see the change. You want to see
you have to see the change after the infection. Yeah. So this, I don't think a lot of this was done, and I read the studies by Ioannidis and others, and they were. I am not an immunologist, but by working for such a long time, at the CDC, I learned enough immunology and epidemiology and other things. Just going to so-called grand rounds, which are wonderful seminars at the CDC, that they get the best people in the field. Why was he doing that? And then he was almost banned from Stanford for doing that. And then there are a lot of people that believe that, but there is no control there. And then he got some very suspect Chinese tests to run it. So, the short answer is testing for antibodies to a disease that we get through our immune system, because they are so-called dendritic cells in our lungs and the whole respiratory system that will catch an antigen and pass it to the blood. And you can get all kind of antibodies in the blood, but then they do not get to the lungs to react. Yeah. So this is not testing for the antibodies. In a short answer means nothing. Testing for the antigens. No one. You have a question? Yes, but just let me finish the thought that this makes no sense. It's okay for
keep talking, Norman. It's fine. It's an aid memoir for me.
I think it is above.
Yeah, it's right here. It's right here, Martin.
Yeah.
It's right
the one
here.
that says community-acquired pneumonia.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, this was just the press release. Let me do the real paper.
Yeah, I guess you. Oh, okay. I guess yeah. You're right. That is the press release.
Yeah,
it's a New England. Do you have it, Norman? I have it here. It's a New England. You've seen it before, I think, Martin, because Norman had put it in the Substack comments on our pneumonia article.
Yeah.
On the article. It's a good study. It's a really good study.
on the adults.
The one called community-acquired pneumonia requiring hospitalization amongst US adults.
Yeah.
But another paper.
But it doesn't say EPIC in it anywhere, or.
Yeah,
right?
it's the if you look at the authors, it says the CDC EPIC study team. So I mean, presumably
right.
they put out a few different. They put out a few
Good that
different.
we have you on the call.
Right, and this is the one that, yeah, but it's a bit of a diversion this now. But this is the one that they came to the conclusion.
This is the children. This is the second paper.
The children, yeah. There's a kids one too. Yeah. These are good studies.
And then I will.
Do you know why they although this is published in 2015, you know, between starting in 2009, Norman, you probably know this. I know you departed the CDC in 2013, but you know, with H1N1 in the US ushered in just more and more flu testing. And then there's a huge period of growth with flu surveillance and flu testing between 2015 and 2020. Do you know why the EPIC study was undertaken? Do you remember why they did it?
Yes, because I was consulted on that, because here is the paper on chloroquine and SARS. Do you see this, Jessica? This paper?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Do I have to press something here?
Do you want to put it in the chat, or you can share screen again if you want.
Okay. That's.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one.
Oh, this is an important paper. This is the one that was erased from Wikipedia, which is funny. Dobra. Okay, now I'll find you the paper.
Just say I'm going to have to drop off and make a call to somebody.
Okay.
And I'm just going to mute it and turn the camera off. I'll see whether you're still there when I finish the call. It'll be 10 minutes maybe.
Okay, so, this is the Henderson's paper. So it's Inglesby, Knudson, and O'Toole.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the one we're familiar with. Yeah, it was just those.
That one, the SARS.
but
That's a SARS HCQ one. Okay.
And you wanted the paper.
Yeah, the Henderson one's fine. Yeah, it's the. Yeah, the issue is mine, all mine. I didn't recognize the EPIC study, and when I brought up that paper,
that's it. That was just his shorthand for it.
Yeah, so I wasn't putting two and two together, Norman. Don't bother yourself exhaustively.
Yeah, this is the paper I wanted to show, which unfortunately I don't have the title page, but let me look if I have it, because when I found that. No, this is the paper.
I mean, I guess I've seen these papers before, but what?
Okay.
Looking at abstracts now, I don't see a definitive statement in the abstracts and the conclusions that say don't swab the upper throat for viruses, and the way that you said it. I mean, is that reading between the lines? Is that tacit?
No. I can again. I can share you the screen. Just let me. This I use a lot because people. This is from the children. Do you see that, Jessica? This I can.
Yeah.
I
can make it larger. No.
But maybe just read it out.
That's from the kid. That's from the kid version of that study, right?
Yeah, this is the kids version.
Yeah.
The detection of pathogens in nasopharyngeal or oropharyngeal swabs with the use of a PCR assay could represent infection limited to the upper respiratory tract or convalescent phase shedding, and detection may not denote causation. That means etiology. And now the other one is here. Do you see that? Moreover, molecular detection of viruses and atypical bacteria in the nasopharynx and oropharynx does not necessarily indicate causation and could represent infection that is limited to upper respiratory tract or convalescent phase shedding. So it's basically the same, but of course they didn't do any controls on that. The only thing is that they were finding different viruses in swabs than in the lungs.
But Martin, isn't that the same thing as sampling for flu? I mean, right?
Remember, exactly.
You wrote about that. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And the way we characterised that in the Substack article that we called "Who Done It" was that the SARS-CoV-2 virus was a bystander.
Right.
Virus.
It happens to be there.
It's a bacteria that committed the crime, but the SARS-CoV-2 got the blame.
Yeah, but that's in the Fauci's paper from 2008.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't. You just need to quote Fauci.
And what I don't understand, and we mentioned this in the Whodunit paper as well, Martin. What I don't understand is why these bacterial infections are always called secondary. They're secondary to the virus that you're really interested in identifying for whatever reason. I don't understand it. It's like it's not secondary to anything. It's a bacterial infection, and in fact, back for just 1 second, Martin, Norman, to what you said about sepsis. We spoke to a New York City doctor who told us that in those spring months that the line management for patients was terrible, like that they weren't changing out, right? Am I saying that right? I'm not a medical doctor, but they weren't changing things out for patients. And a lot of patients died of sepsis due to, infections that were consequential, or a result of poor line management. So yeah, that makes total sense to me.
This is all based, it's secondary, and I believe that, although I am not.
Why is it secondary? I guess that's what it's either primary or it's a bacterial infection. I don't know where the secondary part comes from a language point of view.
The pneumococci are in the lungs always.
Right. So that then suggests that it's not secondary, that it's a covariate.
Right. Right.
Present.
No, it's like that if due to a viral infection, you get slowly the infection going down from your sinuses, and first it starts with
I'm going to interrupt you, Norman, because you're still sharing the screen, and because of that, any viewers of the video in future will just see the shared screen. So you're actually sharing the Skype screen. So maybe stop sharing.
Okay.
I assume that's what's happening here.
Okay. Go.
Back to normal.
There you go. There you
go. Sorry.
Yeah, I am not good in that, but we have here Jessica that well, and you to manage that. So the thing is that all those viral infections cause, not getting into details, they cause fluid accumulation in the lungs. And this is the moment when bacteria get a chance. So they create still more problems in the lungs, but then they get out. And this is the real serious
Right.
This was okay.
That suggests that people are already sort of pre-infected. You say it's ever present. So
yeah. But for instance, do you know why you can get a strep infection of your post-surgical wound?
I'm the last person that can answer that.
There is a good paper which is called Unmasking the Surgeons, but there is also a big CDC study that was in place for like 50 years to reduce the nosocomial infection. Did any one of you have surgery recently? So the strep is in your nose. It doesn't come from the doctors or the operating room. What you do after surgery, you have kind of an itch in the wound. So you transfer very easily the strep from your nose to the wound. And one of the things that CDC, great success was finding that, and then finding an ointment that you can put for 2 weeks, I think, before surgery in your nose, and then in some way you suppress this strep a lot, and also special washing of the wound of the wound area. So the thing is that we have a lot of, those microflora everywhere, in all cavities of our bodies and inside the respiratory tract and in of course the alimentary tract. And the thing is that the bacteria very often wait for an event. And when this event happens, already like almost 100 years ago, the doctors would, listen to what happens in the lungs, and they would know exactly the moment when the bacterial infection happens. Before the 1940s, of course, there were no antibiotics. But in the 1940s, due to wonderful people from England, and not just from England, the penicillin was discovered. And
Scotsman.
Yeah. So this was something, which was fantastic. And since then, the doctors knew exactly when to give antibiotics. Of course, if they have heard just a patient to Zoom or something like that, they could not listen to the what happens in the lungs, and this how the pandemic that happened.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah, you're right. So they had an auditory signal that you routinely use for diagnostic purposes.
See you because you could be safe.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's all very interesting and very sad. My wife and I, we were not vaccinated. I had a bad cold this year, but knowing that there are 1,500 viruses, so I knew that vaccination could not help me. And my wife didn't have a cold since 2016 because she's washing her sinuses regularly every evening. So.
Norman, have you heard Jonathan? Do you know Jonathan Cooey? Have you heard him talk about infectious clones? And do you have any thought about, or do you know anything about infectious clones? Okay.
What does he mean by infectious clones?
Well, Martin might be able to explain it better.
Is it something from Star Wars?
Well, right. I know that's why I kind of stayed away.
No, I think okay. I may misrepresent it, but his idea is that naturally occurring coronaviruses have a very high mutation rate. Yeah, so they don't really, in his view, they don't really pandemic. They're not reliable pandemic agents. But one thing that you can do is that you can create them. And through the process of lab creation, they have a much higher consistency and homogeneity. And what we've seen with the pandemic is that the virus that's labelled SARS-CoV-2 that has been picked up has this property of consistency and homogeneity, which would then suggest that it's an artificial creation. That's the way I understand it, and therefore. But
they don't spread. A clone doesn't spread.
But a clone doesn't spread. It's a very isolated, single burst, discrete event. It's not a continuum that waves through. So that's my understanding of his idea. Is that something that makes sense to you or chimes?
There are a lot of things, a lot of people that are very popular on the internet that put out a lot of, harebrained, stupid, how to call it. Unfortunately, some people that I liked and were very brave started to say that you can swallow an enzyme and it will go to your body, which is a protein, it will go to your body, specifically find the spike protein and destroy it, without touching any other proteins that you are built of. So I think there are more stupid people than people that understand that. Look, those people that say that there is a guy from I think Vermont that says that the spike protein has also a sequence for the prions and for the amyloid proteins, and they are maybe hundreds of thousands of people that, and he's like, I think he's specialist in musicology, and he says he has a lab at home and asks people to send him money so he can do the experiments. And he has like 500,000 followers.
Is that Pastor Fuller?
Pardon?
Is that Walter Chestnut?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I
Yes,
don't know who that is.
Yes.
It's Walter.
I shortened his name to Nat, and he blocked me.
Okay, but okay, so that those analogs that you were using there for comparison were to do with the vaccines, yeah, and the protein, but yeah, so you're saying that this idea of the infectious clones, the Star Wars idea, you don't see any credence in that? It doesn't.
There are millions of sequences of coronavirus submitted to a special database. And the last time I checked was 10 million or something like that. So there is no clonality here. And of course,
yeah, but what he's saying is you take one of those, you take the gene sequence, and then you create it. It has to be created in a lab. So by creating it in a lab, you get consistency. No,
you see, it's another story. You do not know what to create. You have 30,000 nucleotides and 4 different nucleotides at each position. So there are more possible changes to do in a coronavirus than there are stars in the sky. Yeah? Now, which changes to do to make a bad virus? In the Soviet Union, there was a huge institute or complex of institutes called Biopreparat. And they had an institute in Novosibirsk called Vector. And when Clinton came, he decided to have this partnership for peace in '94. And then for the money for that, I hired, because they disbanded those institutes that were working on biological weapons. So I hired 2 Russian scientists, one from this institute in Siberia and one from Leningrad, another institute. And I was asking them, how come, you worked in this institute for 20 years or more, you had all the possible tools of molecular biology, and you didn't create any virus that was worse than what we know. This was more or less, maybe a bit before those discussions we had with some guys who claim that they have information from MI5 or MI6 that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons. You may remember that. This was given to the United States as the ultimate proof that they needed to attack Iraq. Okay, so in this institute, they were creating a lot of bad stuff. The problem is how to test it. There is no way to test, let's say, billions of possible changes to a virus if this virus is bad. There is no way, looking at the sequence, to test if it's good or bad, because you need the phenotype, and you cannot deduce the phenotype from a genotype. Some people say that, of course, these people in the Wuhan Institute, they knew exactly what to create, how. So somebody told me, of these Russians, one of them told me that they thought about testing those new constructs on people that were, sentenced to death, but then they were afraid that will come out and they will have a problem. But as you know, Tony Blair submitted such stories which were not true. And I remember the discussions. Henderson took part in those discussions, and he said, absolutely, you cannot create biological weapons. The last biological weapons were created by the Japanese in China, which were bacteria that then they brought, not knowing, to Japan, and then more people probably died in China, but still a lot of people died from the Japanese experiments in Japan. So you can think about making something, but you cannot plan it. You cannot test it. Those people, as I told you, who said that, you just make a small change in a spike protein and you get a very bad virus, and this furin, this was furin site, this was created. These people have no idea about molecular evolution and of course, how to make a virus from one host move to another host.
So you're effectively saying that the gain of function research is itself a chimera. It's not. It's a mirage. Yeah.
Right. Right.
I claimed in the patent, you can claim all kinds of things in the patent, that this adenovirus I worked on in Louisiana, that it can be turned into, by using a gain of function, you can remove something from the virus that is not necessary, you can put in something, and that's a gain of function. This has nothing to do with creating biological weapons. But people do not understand that. They say, oh, gain of function. But where is the proof? Where is the beef?
Yeah, it's science fiction.
Did anyone below 65 get a cold on Diamond Princess? No. So if they claimed with Fauci, Barik, and some other guys, this Dushak from Great Britain, of Ukrainian heritage, that they created a new virus that was transferred by this Chinese who was really very sick to Diamond Princess, they should get fired. They produced not a tiger, but a kitty.
Right,
But this is so fascinating. Look at, I mentioned this Iraq, Saddam Hussein's biological weapon. This made, although maybe they wanted just to test the US military, this was used as one of the explanations that the US has to attack Iraq.
Yeah, sure. We do recall. And Norman recently wrote an article about the Gulf War syndrome and the vaccinations that were administered to US, UK, and other armed forces upon the invasion and before the invasion of Iraq, which subsequently, may have caused lots of adverse events and indeed some deaths. So why? I mean, are you saying that they genuinely believed that Saddam Hussein could produce biological weapons and therefore they vaccinated, or was this just yet another excuse to invade Iraq and try out some vaccine tech at the same time?
The thing is that people imagined that anthrax, and this was developed for anthrax, that this is something which is dangerous. And I talked to those Russians, and they made a very good comparison. To attack New York with anthrax, or for that matter, Chicago. I live in the sticks. I am not living in a big city. We would need 20,000 Boeing 747s that would hover over New York City, not on a very big height, and people then spreading this with shovels, tons or millions of tons of anthrax spores. So such, something that because anthrax, you get pulmonary anthrax, yeah. So that's not feasible because you cannot drop a bomb, several tons of anthrax and think that 1,000 people will die. No. So there was no need. CDC worked, the people that I know worked on the development of the anthrax vaccine, but it's not used. Some people in the military, because it's easy to tell people in the military that they have to get a vaccine, and part of the CDC, which you may not know, is militarized. There are people who are in the public health service and are they wear the same uniforms as the Navy, because this comes from the quarantine, the department that
Right.
Ah, right. I didn't know that.
Well, quarantining ships, right? I mean, that's hundreds of years old. That's hundreds of years old.
200.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that an anthrax
hospital ships for quarantining people.
Right. The way that an anthrax really, if somebody wanted to say, well, maybe New York or Italy, they used anthrax. I think the way that would have to happen would have to be within a hospital or through oxygen tanks or something like that, like very point released. But, and some people have said, well, there was a release of something maybe in the subways. And I think it's something.
This was tried by the Japanese. Japanese tried the botulin toxin and anthrax, and then only this poison gas worked. You remember this Japanese sect that tried to.
The sarin gas
Oh,
attack.
right.
Yeah,
That's
sarin gas.
right. That's
But
a long time
the
ago.
biological
Yeah.
weapons they used didn't work.
Right.
So-
They can't get far. You know, again, unless you're putting something in an oxygen tank and then giving that oxygen directly to someone. And that's what I've said to people too about the lab leak and all that. I'm like, look, you know, a direct injection medically, you know, is the way that it's the quickest, easiest way to harm somebody, whether you're, you know, it's a high dose of midazolam, you know, what that's the easiest thing. But this idea that we have the power to like leak these biological agents and then they transfer person to person all over the world with lightning speed. I mean, it's just not it's not the way it happened. It's never happened. It's never happened.
Yeah.
And can't happen. But the government has an interest in making people believe that can happen, right? Because it keeps people afraid. So
I don't know, because, you know, suddenly to claim that this is something. Oh, hi, Jonathan.
Yeah, I finished.
You missed all the good stuff.
we're on to anthrax.
I'm sorry. I had to I had to speak to somebody there about a conversation later on.
Okay.
A pre-conversation.
I was now that you're back, I was about to try and wind up the call. So
Fine. Go on, you got it all sorted.
Well,
you know,
no, it's not for that reason. We've done almost 2 hours, and it's been fantastic. It's been really informative and exciting. And I didn't expect, Norman, at the start that you would suggest recording it because it's turned into more or less some sort of, you know, interview type format. Yeah. I'm just wondering, you know, now that you've chosen to record it and you have the file on your machine, whether it be, I mean, I'd propose putting this on say our Substack, if you'd be happy with that, sharing it, and other people could watch it.
Yeah, I think we had a very good discussion. Thank you, Jessica, for the help with sharing.
But the big risk is the one thing that's worrying me, given that you've admitted that you're not maybe the most computer savvy person, is how do we get that file from you to me, so I can just edit it slightly and then put it up in the Substack.
That means the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, the video is very simple. After we disconnect, you see in Skype.
Oh, so we sharing it as well? Is that
It's recording for all of us, I think.
Yeah,
is it? Right.
I think we'll get a link.
So I'm showing myself up as being the least technically savvy person here. Okay.
No, it's very easy to download. I am not a good editor.
You don't need to show me. It's fine. I just didn't know Skype did it in a distributed fashion.
Skype does it. It took me 30 days on Skype, this file. And then you can just, when we disconnect, you can go to Skype and you will see this video and click on the 3 dots, and then you can download it.
That's fine. So I take it you're happy that I put this up then?
I have no problem. I record every week the conversations with a very nice lady who is not a biologist in any way. She is a programmer or specialist in informatics, and she brings me back to earth. That means if I start to talk, you know, sharp, then she say, no, but can we change, you know, some things in what you say?
So are those conversations public? Do you share them?
But unfortunately they are in Polish, but you can run, you know. Because I speak 6 languages, so I'm happy to do everything in 6 languages because I lived all around the world. And I was on Facebook in English and in Portuguese and Spanish. So I had been on Facebook from the beginning. No, that's okay.
I was trying to work out whose dog is that.
Yeah. So, you know, on Skype, I am only from February 2022 because somebody although I have an account from 2009, but I never, not on Skype, on Twitter. On Twitter, I am from February 22, only because some of my former students from Poland told me that there is a idiot, I won't be mentioning his name, just what I think about him, who is bad-mouthing me. He has nothing to know. He should be a specialist on coronaviruses, but he knows nothing about virology or epidemiology or whatever. So my career on Twitter is relatively young, although I'm on Facebook quite long. And also, if you want, I can give you a file, which I'm very proud of, a Polish weekly magazine, published an interview with me in a quite popular Polish Polish weekly magazine. Right here in chat, I can do it in, yeah. And this is the English version of that. And this is what I had to say in December of 2022. So in some way, all my knowledge about the pandemic.
I think
is that in chat? Did you paste that into chat?
Yes. Chat is the place you can get all the.
Yeah, but it's not showing for me.
No, I'm not seeing anything.
I don't see it either.
No.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Once again.
Because you have to hit enter. Did you?
No. It went.
Maybe it's just slow.
Oh, okay.
There we got it.
Thank you. I had to hit enter. Okay.
Not showing yet.
It's showing for me.
It is. Maybe it's just
interview PDF. Huh?
Yeah. No, not yet. Okay, just keep going. Oh yes. Okay.
And this is the original version.
You actually shared this with me, Norman, on LinkedIn, didn't you?
But I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. A while ago.
No, this is almost 1 year old. So.
Yeah. So before I had to rush to the front door, I was suggesting that we wrap up because we're 2 hours in. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But it's been so helpful that I'd like to maybe we should consider meeting again.
Oh yes, with pleasure.
There's lots of other things that I don't think we've given that. Because I've got a list of things that I think we've discussed. That PCR testing. We talked about the ability to produce killer viruses at all. The bioweapon myth. You covered that. We talked about infectious clones, Jonathan, when you were absent.
Yeah, I asked him about that.
And Norman was very forthright in his views about that hypothesis. We talked about the work. I think it was Parsifal, very briefly, which
presumably the infectious clones Norman did not think was necessary for the story. And
no.
I mean, neither does Jonathan Cooey necessarily. I just want to put that out there, right? He says that if something biologically, was happening, or the people in the labs initially needed to see something, that could have been
right.
used. That's my understanding of what he said.
So when you get a chance, Jonathan, you should maybe just rewind and go back through the video.
20 minutes or so.
Yeah. And then right at the start, we dealt with the sort of bacterial hypothesis, which I think was, you gave that a big tech, Norman. So, but to be brief, you said we should have just read Fauci's paper and we didn't have to read anything else. Basically, that we needn't have bothered writing those long articles.
On on Twitter, the limit is 2 hours, so we are close to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this will go up in the Substack. I think I'll edit at the end of it.
Yeah, I will be unavailable almost the whole November,
right.
So we can meet again after November the 27th.
Yeah. Are you going on a cruise?
No.
Diamond Princess.
I should. I don't like
China.
cruises. I don't like cruises. We have been on several cruises, and November is actually our wedding anniversary. We usually went somewhere far, but we won't be traveling together for many reasons. So, but I will be here. I'll be back for a wedding anniversary, but we'll have guests from Spain, and we'll have a lady that will come here during my absence because I have to travel on business. So
Yeah.
Sometimes retired people have businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Right. No, it's been absolutely super. It's been great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah.
I
Well,
enjoyed
good to connect with you.
because I learn something every time, I talk to people, and this is something that I like. I'm still quite active in understanding stuff that I do not necessarily understand now. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, I think it was more us learning from you in this instance.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can talk about this contamination of cyanide with arsenic. That means of the vaccine, RNA vaccine with DNA. But this is something, another scam on a large scale by people that push it. So
Right, right. So that's for early December, right? We can all look
okay,
forward to
guys,
that as
Yep.
well.
I will stop the recording.
All right.
Right.